It is an election year, and we've already witnessed what a hostile organisation the ABC can become to Conservatives if it feels under attack. So it comes as no surprise that the coalition has axed its indexation freeze on the national broadcaster, which means you, the taxpayer, will fork out millions and millions more dollars propping up the organisation. Paul Barry was predictably delighted.
But now, some great news for the ABC.
The federal government will reverse a controversial decision to freeze millions of dollars of ABC funding. From July, the national broadcaster will receive almost $3.3 billion over 3 years, while SBS will receive more than $950 million.
When will our Conservative politicians learn? Pandering to the institutionalised activist journalism culture at the ABC will win you exactly 0 favours. They will never like you. And if the track record on covering Christian Porter and Alan Tudge is anything to go by, the politically charged nature of their reporting will continue. I know this because they have never apologised, despite wasting so much money in legal fees on stories that should never have been published, that could never be proven. In their minds, they have done nothing wrong, and drunk on your money, they will continue to pursue their agenda in the only way they know how. And now, in the middle of a pandemic, having spent so much federal money, with everyday Australians having lost so much, to see this cash splash is a slap in the face. The ABC now gets $3.3 billion over the next 3 years to keep operating exactly in the only way it knows how. So, how does Communications Minister Paul Fletcher justify this decision? Have a listen to this interview with our very own Chris Kenny.
Funding is really quite separate from issues about the quality of the ABC's journalism. I sent Ita Buttrose, the chair of the ABC, an open letter in relation to the Four Corners episode concerning my colleagues Christian Porter and Alan Tudge. I reminded the board in that letter that the ABC, under its Act, is required to have news gathering which is accurate and impartial according to the recognised standards of objective journalism.
Yeah, you wrote them a letter and they ignored you, then gave them an extra $84 million to do the same sort of journalism. Well done, Minister. Every media organisation in this country has faced financial pressure this pandemic, and the ABC is using guaranteed funds to encroach on the commercial sector. We cannot trust them to balance a budget on their own because they don't tell the truth. Look at this article from 2020 promising that the bizarre fringe feature website ABC Life would be turned into ABC Local with a focus on telling outer suburban and regional stories. This change will mean that content will come from the broadcaster from a range of journalists and program makers across the ABC, including in outer suburban and regional centres, he said. It will be the ABC's home for unique and distinctive stories about real people, real places and real lives that helps communities connect around Australia. Well, that never happened. In saying that this lie is still sitting on a news story on their very own website. Instead, the website was turned into ABC Every Day, and the content is identical to that of the ABC Life website. Here, a few splashed across their website. Have a look at this one. How to cook a zucchini pasta in 35 minutes. Why scrubbing a sink can really be romantic. Not everybody wants chocolate this Valentine's Day. And what is a sex detox? Why are these women swearing by it? I have to also point out that the zucchini pasta story was leading their homepage this morning. It was one of their top stories. This is an organisation that needs to learn how to deal with budgetary pressures. If you have to publish this sort of rubbish, then you don't deserve more taxpayer funds. We deserve a lean and efficient national broadcaster, and childish blogging should never form part of the brief. Well, let's go back to the panel. Sophie, let's start with you. What did you make of the announcement? It took me by surprise that they're getting rid of the indexation freeze. What's your take on it?
Well, Jack, it's effectively rewarding bad behaviour.
Yes.
They are getting $84 million over 3 years. They're having that indexation freeze removed. And there appears to be no real strategy in place to remove this hard green left agenda that the ABC repeatedly push. They bash up the Conservative government day in, day out. And effectively seem to be a cheer squad for the left. And I think this is problematic because remembering, Jack, the ABC has to abide by its charter, and that is to be independent and impartial in their reporting. And I would argue in many cases they're not. But I must say, Jack, if you had 84 million dumped at your front doorstep, you'd be pretty happy. And the public broadcaster is repeatedly crying poor, yet they really need to take a good hard look at how they spend some of their money and understand that the commercial outlets have huge, have had huge struggles in recent years, particularly during the pandemic with advertising drop-offs. But the ABC don't have to worry about any of that. And I think the federal government, while they moan about the ABC, they're effectively rewarding bad behaviour with more money and hoping that it will turn into votes. And I don't think it'll get them a single extra vote at this election.
I couldn't agree more. And Caroline, do we think it's too dangerous to try and change the culture at the ABC? Is it even possible? Because when you're elected, you've got a very short amount of time before you start campaigning again. And we know what they're like when somebody threatens their budget. Can a Conservative government ever attempt to rein them in?
I think they can, but it takes courage. And it's something that this current government has shown it lacks in taking this move. What they've done effectively is offer this ferocious lion their arm in the hope that it won't eat all of them.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen, right? It's not. The problem is like $84 million, that's one thing. That is a drop in the ocean for the ABC, which is on more than $1 billion a year. While other media companies struggle, not just during the pandemic, which has exacerbated everyone's financial woes, but in the, with the rise of digital social media, it's put a lot of pressure on newsrooms. And most newsrooms have had to let a lot of staff go. But at the ABC, they are bloated. They've got a lot of dead wood lying around. It's not that we can't use a public broadcaster, but I agree with your editorial. It should be lean, it should be efficient, it should be non-biased, it should abide by its own charter. And it's not just the legal cases that they've spent a fortune defending some of their own stories, but they're even defending the Twitter accounts of some of their senior journalists, the so-called private, even though they have a public platform and you could argue an obligation to be fair in their personal tweets. They're defending those too legally to the tune of millions of dollars.
Well said. In one breath, they say these are their private Twitter accounts. We can't stop what they tweet. But then they pick up the legal bills when they push the limits. It is an absolute disgrace. Even the BBC over in the UK has stopped that practice. We're very, very far behind.